We do not own the rights to anything or any music that's heard during the duration of this podcast. Also, a lot of these shows will have explicit content. So if you are not a fan of any cursing or profanity, you may want to walk away, but that does not mean that every show will consist of such.
Are you serious? Like, we at season 7? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 seasons. Yeah, season 7. Magic number. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna go in depth with that, but yeah, this will be a very positive season. I don't know why and what's making me say that, but everything's changed. Everything is a lot different. I know the title you'll still see the podcast about sports and stuff, but yeah, you ain't gonna get no sports. Correction, you will still get sports because this is still called a podcast about sports and stuff. Just want to add that in there. I'm still, like I said, stuff is very fluctuating now. I found that the connection with things is to get people to talk, as well as me taking time to talk. So you'll notice it, especially when you hear the first few episodes of this season. But it's just about sitting down and just having good talk, good conversation. Pass the message. Y'all know they ain't going nowhere. If you know, you know. If you've been around for a while, you already know how we give it up. But just hang in there. The content's amazing. The moves are even more amazing. And just put yourself in the right headspace to get this information. So hope y'all enjoy. Didn't realize until I hit record that it has been close to a month since I recorded, and a lot has changed, obviously. I'm coming in with a fair amount of content, an interesting title lead-in, but also some good conversation that I want to address while I have an opportunity. I'm probably not following the rules because some people have shared or addressed that I should be enjoying my time away, which I am. I'm enjoying my time. Obviously I've done all of that and didn't tell y'all. This is episode 374 of The Pass with your host BT, and it may sound a little different only because you might catch some of the ocean-esque or the oceanfront vibes from taking a little bit of time away. And the time away is being valued. Don't make any mistake about it. I'm gonna build this up in a different manner than I normally would, because normally I would just go right into what pushed me to really want to do a podcast, but instead I'm gonna kind of follow my script, my protocol. This is gonna be, as I've told a lot of my friends and as I've been constantly sharing, this is gonna run what I like to call the Angie Martinez flow. And if you don't know what I mean by that, it's basically impromptu improv from the hip, just talking about what's what and what's been going on and what is going on. So first things first, I pop them freaks off. Now, first things first, we are now in the second round. A lot of stuff has happened with sports now that I'm thinking about it. First and foremost, a lot of awards and accolades were handed out. I believe Mike Brown with the Kings got Coach of the Year. De'Aaron Fox got Clutch Player of the Year. Joel Embiid was able to get MVP. Paolo got Rookie of the Year. Malcolm Brogdon got Sixth Man. Trying to make sure I'm naming everything as it's coming up. Those are the awards that I can think of. That I think those are the big ones that's out there. We are officially out of the first round of the playoffs. We have the Cavs somewhat getting upset, but not really. The big story that has kind of made waves is that this is the first time in the NBA where every numbered seed is in the second round. So seeds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all in the second round. Now, obviously, based on the variation between teams and players, it's a little mixed up, but it is what it is. Memphis, quote unquote, got upset by LA. The story with that series was Dylan Brooks was a offensive nightmare, but also as far as on the defensive end, it's the age-old phrase. If you talk that talk, you got to walk that walk. If you could say, I'm holding you under 40, but your team loses by 40 points, I get it, you can't stop the whole team, but on the flip side, you got to be sure if you showing up, you show up where it matters. And it's like, things show up sometimes that's not in the box score, and we have to remember that as fans and as people, but it's so hard to not be box score based in a sport that consists of such. The Knicks, like I said, the Knicks beat the Cavs. Biggest upset of all was the Heat upsetting Milwaukee again within like the last 4 years. And even worse, probably not even a week or so after that loss, the Bucks fire Budenholzer. So that led to the conversation of out of the last 4 years, other than Steve Kerr, all of the coaches who have won a championship were fired. So Nick Nurse, I think this is, I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but coach for Toronto, he was fired. Frank Vogel with the Lakers was fired. I said this to my boy before, and I'm saying this on the podcast. I don't know if, and I mean, it all depends. It could, like, the Lakers could surprise us and actually might make a solid run with the team they have. So we'll see. But I'm not on like a wow factor with them just yet. But then it's, of course, like anything, it's still early. They're playing Golden State. Golden State was able to the Kings were able to get the Warriors to 7 games. But the Warriors did come out on top. Phoenix beat the Clippers. I believe I said I was gonna update series and talk about them. I can't really pinpoint my picks at the time, but everything kind of looked how I expected it to look. Philly did sweep Brooklyn, so I do recall stating that. The Celtics were able to beat Atlanta, and Denver really didn't have any problems with Minnesota. I thought that series was going to sweep, but I think they ended up winning it in 5. So now that leads us into our current matchups. Yesterday I didn't get to see it, but Phoenix did get a win because Phoenix was down 2-0. Big story with that series right now is Chris Paul. Just seeing how he's going to, having him out for games 3 through 5 is a big deal. And they've already played game 3, so now game 4 and 5 will be a big topic, to say the least. Not really gonna give a prediction. I mean, if I'm put in a position like pick between the 4 matchups, I'm gonna say Denver should be able to finish out the series in 6. The Heat will likely, I don't want to say upset, but the Heat will have a better advantage over New York. New York has the advantage over Miami. All things considered, this is the Lakers, and this, it's LeBron. But I've said this time and time again about the Lakers. Jared Vanderbilt is my X factor. I personally have really been drinking Jared Vanderbilt Kool-Aid for quite some time. Like D'Angelo Russell, what you see is what you get. But I'm more inclined to seeing how Vanderbilt helps his team, because Rui Hachimura, like, he had already been there, but since the rest of the players have come in, we really haven't seen him. And then the other story with the Lakers that no one really has been talking about is, and even my boy, when I told him, he was shocked. I was like, they got Mo Bamba, and Mo Bamba's been out injured, so getting him back, if he's able to play in the playoffs, that'll be an even more important factor, because they really don't, to say what I was saying, they really don't have much of an inside presence. So getting him back on the floor could be a helpful resource. And the other matchup, Celtics and Sixers, the story that everyone's been talking about, and this happened yesterday, ironically, was Joel Embiid was given the award for MVP, and then they go on to lose the game. And I think now they're down, if I'm not mistaken, they're down 2-1 right now in that series, which you don't want to. I say this wholeheartedly, and I say this with love. You don't want to be down against certain teams. And specifically with the Celtics are inadvertently playing from behind because they've already been to the finals. So they have the taste of what the finals looks like. So getting back to the finals for them again, they know what they need to do to finish the job, because you were playing against and I don't, well, at the time I really wasn't doing sports a lot last year, but you're playing against the Warriors, and the Warriors are going to come, they're going to bring their best effort. I'm catching my words because I've been sent a bunch of Charles Barkley videos of him just saying things that just don't sound right. But what you see is what you're literally going to get with the Warriors. The Celtics have to play a perfect series against whomever they play in the finals. If it becomes the biggest stretch and or reach would be Celtics Lakers. But on the flip side, I also look at it as this is the year, because Denver is actually fully healthy. Even without them having Bones Highland, Denver should be able to get the job done this year. Like, there's no reason not to. And I didn't talk about it either. Even with the Clippers getting Westbrook, the bigger story with that series wasn't Paul George. It was more so Kawhi. Like, I think Kawhi's injury really is a lot bigger than being put out there. But, that's kind of one of those let Father Time do his thing. But I also look at it more like they have to make sure they take care of their investment. Because whether you say it or not, an NBA player is an investment, because that's an investment to your team, it's an investment to your franchise, it's an investment to your fans. The list goes on and on. So that's what I have for the NBA run. The NFL, I'm gonna kind of give a easy yet simple, direct discussion. The draft wasn't bad. Of course, Carolina had the first pick. We got who we needed, which was a quarterback. It drew concern about who's already quarterbacks with the team, but in reality, it's like you still got to be able to show up for getting your number one slot. But it's also a play now league, so it's like even with getting a good quarterback on our team, there's still other things that aren't being put out on the table that personally are concerning for me, and I've been kind of put in that position of like, you can put anybody at quarterback. If they're a good quarterback, they're a good quarterback. But if your O-line is shit or your O-line is trash, your O-line is trash. There's no getting around that. And I think sometimes in sports that gets ignored along with other things. And that's one of those things that I think is a big deal. Ironically, a friend of mine who I'm going to talk about that conversation, a separate conversation with her in a bit, but we were talking because she's a Raiders fan. And, she mentioned it, and I think it's clear when you look at it, when your team knows what they need, you're going to go after those needs and get those needs fulfilled. And their biggest need was defense. So they were able to fulfill those roles and fulfill those slots. But the other big story, big trust, Lamar Jackson got a bag. And Lamar Jackson, I think what makes it a good story is the money was kept in-house, which I think no one's really talking about enough, but it's something that we need to like really think of. It's like, yo, this is a big deal, whether you are a fan of his or not a fan of his or whatever. He just knows, like, it's interesting because the conversation came up of, I don't think they should pay him this much money because he hasn't shown up in the playoffs. They haven't done this, that, and the third. Not an invalid statement. But then I say this because this is like the thing that has to be understood and acknowledged when it comes to a sport. Okay, the money shouldn't go to him. Fine, let's not give him the money. Who does the money go to? How do you allot it within the team? Because I mean, they have the money available to spend. They're like the NBA and the NFL are multi-billion-dollar businesses. No one is going to tell me otherwise. I'm not. This isn't like some argumentative. I'm debating y'all on this. I'm just telling you what it is and how it plays out and has panned out over the years with sports. So the money went where it needed to go. Whether you're a fan of his, not a fan of his, didn't like that it went the way it did, it was what it was. End of discussion. So I just wanted to give that spiel. And it wasn't like, it's not a spiel as even me taking a shot at anyone or even being subliminal. Because I've had the conversation offline with the person as well. But just more so making it like let's really look at this for what it is and not kind of sort of talk about it or talk around it. Because I think that's sometimes a thing that's done with sports that I'm never going to personally be supportive of, because you have to do it with, like, everything comes back to integrity, whether we claim to see it or not see it. And that's kind of where I'm at with that whole process. So that's NBA, that's NFL, that's kind of my overall sports spiel. I don't know if I'm going to hit a half-hour mark. I'm not sure where this is going to go. But I'm going to get the listeners to do something a little different today. And again, no notes, no real structured discussion, but I'm going to give some conversation that I've had. And it's funny because I've had this conversation with my friend yesterday. Shout out to Brittany. She's a great person. We had some dope conversation. We're looking to link up and do more convo today about, like, just not just on the state of social media, but just where things are. And it was funny because where the conversation got heavy, because we're both like, and I hope she's okay with me putting her business. I haven't really gotten the approval for it, but I don't think she's gonna really trip. She is looking to do web design, because I told her, like, I got my business with doing web design, and she's doing web design and practically doing graphic design. Like, to be fair, she's practically doing like brand marketing to a T. Because if you think about it and you really look at it, brand marketing is getting whoever has a brand out there to people, and getting it out there to people looks like getting information on via email, via website, via the logo, via, if we're using it, social media, which is going to go into why the title is what the title is, and just making it hit who it needs to hit. So as her and I were initially talking about this, and she literally was just like, yeah, so, I've been using WordPress now. I know people use WordPress, and I believed her when she said it. But then when she really said it as, I use .org, and I'm using Elementor, I'm like, you're in the driver's seat with what most people are afraid to use. So it then led to more intriguing conversations, because we went to one bar, kicked it, chopped it up, politics, because we hadn't linked up in person in practically over a decade. Because I think the last time, the Twitter event that I met her at was, I'm tempted to say it was 2012. It was either 2012 or 2013, one of the two. Because that was when I'm more geared to 2012, only because that was when I was beginning to blend into and challenge the social butterfly stage that I didn't have. And I've always told my friend Yoshiko about this, but I personally think Meet Your Tweet got me out of my shell when it came to who I was and what I was capable of. Because at that time, my identity was primarily journaling and blogging. That was it. Like, there was no podcast, there was no tech creative, there was no like comfortability with getting equipment and really making what I talked about become a topic, because I just kind of had like the mainstream voice without making it be more than what it needed to be for the most part. So we were talking, and like I said, we went to one place. Between both places, we kind of the conversation circled, and it started at the first place we met at, and then we really got into it and when I say get into it, we really talked about it on a more deeper level at the second location. But it mainly had to do with the simple fact that and I'm not going to say this as consumers, as business owners, and a lot of people who are looking to push their brand or their network, they put the reliability into an application. And when I say putting into an application, I'm referring to the social media boys, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Some people, it's not a big push with it, but Snapchat. It's funny because people have LinkedIn pages and a lot of people don't. LinkedIn isn't as ad pushy, but you will still get like interesting spins and usages with TikTok. I mean, I'm not TikTok, with LinkedIn. But what happens is people are so weighted on how their traffic and or activity is via, say, a Twitter, say an Instagram. And like her and I had this convo. If you create a page and you post, say, 10 reels, 10 stories, 10 posts or whatever, if you're posting something and it's not getting the views that you think it should get, if the discouragement becomes, hey, I'm not going to do it, creating another page isn't helping the issue. It's almost like putting a piece of tape over a hole that is literally like, you know that this is about to seep through and go through and do whatever. But the reality is you need to address that hole and fixing that and putting some mold or caulk or whatever and covering it and actually getting it taken care of, instead of, oh, I'm just gonna put some tape over it. I'll plug it or fix it later. And in the social media world, and I'm not saying this isn't even me like coming at her about it, because it was even me when I looked at some of the stuff that I've worked on with my personal brand. Y'all know I'm all about the realness where I can present it. And let's see, Rocket Line. So let's see, where is the page? I don't have it. Oh, there it is. So anyone who knows me knows I have a graphic design page. I have been running that page I'm going to go back to my first photo. My first post on the page was in October of 2018. And when I was designing or working on things at the time, I really didn't have much of a direction or a movement with what I was doing then. Time progressed, and 2019, 2020, I started to really put effort and invest in designing. Like, even like I made it, and I loved seeing it where I'd made like a logo or design for someone, and they kind of took what was done with that and made their own design. And I think that's really what it comes down to when it comes to designing and creating, is that you give someone that idea or give someone that thought of like, hey, you have the skill and the scope of like pushing outside of that boundary, push it to its next level. And it could be either you having someone else help you with recreating that next level, or you figure out like, I think this is what I want my look or my feel to be for what I'm working on. All over the place, off the radar, but gonna reel it back to the main point where I'm at with that. The last post that I put on that page was July of last year. Have I worked on anything since then? Of course. Have I put anything on the page sharing what I worked on? No. Because what I'm looking at, which a lot of people don't think of, is most times we feel like we got to put finished products. We got to put, this is what was done. This is what we sent someone. That was the final design, and they were happy and everything's great. But the raw reality and what has to be acknowledged is you also want to put up or share hey, these were the bad, here's something I started and we started working on it, but it didn't really go as planned. Because then that shows that you're human with your designing and you're human with your content. Content is content is content. And it's a push and pull on the content side when it comes to the social media platforms, which is why the title with the social state of mind is so key, because as challenging as it is not to do it, brands and people have to find ways to promote and push beyond what a platform does. And I get it a lot clearer why a friend of mine, he was very reluctant and still is, and I respect him 100% for it, of not going the social media avenue. But then it was, and he knows whenever he talks to me about this, he'll be like, well, I'm not really wanting to mess with the website side of it. And I'm like, I understand that, but that's going to be the market that's going to really be the, hey, if you're trying to get folks on board with what you're doing, this is where you can do it. And this is where the opportunity comes in to make folks know who you are, to know who you are and what you bring. And I think he's giving it a shot. And I mean, I've even broken it down to folks, like, you don't need to have like this, like, overdosed, overhyped page. Like, if you're starting off, and I've been very understanding and aware between if you're using Wix or if you're using Shopify, it's a page, it's an online presence. If you're pushing it up and you want to turn the needle a notch, you go to the WordPress. You go to the other designing sites that you pretty much are kind of you have more control of your designing. The turnaround or the trade-off of that is you're now put in a position of expanding your creative palette to a point where you may not realize how much more you could gain from pushing that palette. And it's funny, like, y'all aren't here, but to kind of give you perspective, where I'm recording, you probably just heard that CEO, which is funny, but where I'm recording, like where I'm sitting at a table, and right in front of me there's a mirror. So every time I'm talking, but then I'm also looking at the mirror, and I'm like just really thinking this out and really listening to how intense of a conversation it is. And I've kind of I've kind of veered away and saying it without so many words, but the point that I'm making, or what I want people to be clear of, is we as business owners, product owners, branders, anyone who's doing any form of a business right now, you should not be as reliable on social media apps, because they can go tomorrow. If Twitter decides tomorrow to say, look, we done, we closing the app down, you're not using it anymore, how are you going to get folks to know what you do as a business? If you don't have an online presence, if your online presence was relied upon via a social media app, there's a problem. Someone brought this to my attention, and I'm still trying to learn this myself. If any of these podcast platforms tomorrow say, hey, we shutting down, we done, how do you get your podcast out there using the non-traditional podcast feeds? Because Libsyn, Buzzsprout, I can't think of all of them, Spreaker, there are multiple podcast platforms that a lot of people use to get their podcasts online. The interesting part is, and I'm probably going to start some trouble, but these are things that most podcasters may be already aware of. There's only one thing that's important about the podcast: recording the information, uploading it, getting your tags. All of that's fine. All of that's good. That's all relevant. That's all beneficial. No problem with none of those things. But the important factor, or the key piece, is the RSS feed. All you're really needing is an RSS feed for your podcast. Once you have that, you pretty much take the RSS feed is literally what gets your podcast to Apple. So I'll give the story because it's relevant, and I'm gonna spin back to the social piece as well. Podcast submissions and pushing your podcast across platforms now is way easier than it was 5 or 10 years ago. Case in point, my first podcast I did was the Brate podcast. When I did that podcast, I had to submit the RSS feed through Apple. Buzzsprout gave me the RSS feed. I was like, word, I got an RSS. Let me get it over to Apple. Let me submit it. I got an icon. I got my image. Everything's good. You got to wait a couple days, and then they approved it. Now, if you're using the right platform, the platform pretty much does all the distribution for you. Like Buzzsprout does all of your distribution work. They're going to push it through to whoever. A friend of mine, I love her dearly. We good about how we talk about stuff, and I'm keeping it 100 with what I'm about to go into, but she was so gung-ho to be like, I need the podcast, and it's got to be on Apple. It's got to be on Apple. And I'm like, it's cool to be on Apple, but everybody don't have an iPhone, number one. Number two, there are going to be those that you want to target who have podcast platforms, and you want to get your podcast on those apps. So if it gets through Apple is then going to be Apple would be beneficial to get it to those other podcast applications. Like I'll put this would be kind of my simplest and easiest way to put it in perspective, and then it'll hit home. Right now, I believe my podcast goes to at least 12. I'm saying 12, but it's probably more than that. I'm about to check now. Y'all, only on the past do you get this live of content. Let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. My podcast goes through 20 different applications. And that's everything from the big boys, Apple, Spotify, and Google are going to be your big three. Then if you start to get a little specific, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Alexa. Sorry if I just said it and you just turned on. My bad. Podcast Addict, Pocket Cast. Those are the platforms you want your podcast on. To this day, the biggest platform that my podcast, quote unquote, went viral on, Pandora. I'm still stuck on that. I was like, wait a minute. So most people, when they think of Pandora Music, they automatically think, okay, they go there, listen to music, ad free, or you listening to ads, get your 6 skips or whatever. But people listen to podcasts on Pandora. The Amazon podcast I did about Jeff Bezos still gets listens, which is still like wow to me. And also, before I go any further, let me make sure because I'm all about remembering to acknowledge accolades and moments. Even though I'm at episode 374 total with the podcast, I've done, not all of my podcast episodes were done on Buzzsprout. So Buzzsprout gives you like not awards, but they'll recognize different things. Like if you've hit 10,000 downloads, I don't think I'm at 10,000. That's like, I think that's my next big goal, is to hit 10,000. But let's see, my bad, y'all. I'm usually prepped but slipping. Yeah, I got the photo, so I need to add it. Oh, my bad. So yeah, November of last year, I had 10,000. But the accolade or the announcement, which I'm gonna add it after this recording, is I've officially uploaded 250 podcasts on Buzzsprout. Why is that relevant, Brian? Well, interestingly enough, I always give this stat whenever a lot of people will come to me and say, Brian, I want to do a podcast. I want to record shows. I want to get into some content. I want to really get my information out there. And I said, I'm going to tell you this, not to discourage you, but to be honest. Give your effort to doing it, because if you don't give the effort to it, you're not going to continue doing it. And there really is a such term as pod fading, that I don't share that term to intimidate people. I share that term to make people aware that it's a real thing. Like, I have seen podcasters pod fade. I have seen podcasts that were doing numbers and disappear, or they may be creating podcasts, but they're not getting what they want out of it, so they stop. Like, most of the time, and anyone who knows me knows this, it's not that I don't want to or don't have the ability to do podcasts, everything is timing. Everything is about space. Like Saturdays, based on how my schedule and my routine got reconfigured, Saturdays became my podcast day. Now, every Saturday is not going to always be a podcast day. Some Saturdays are usually, all right, I got stuff I need to work on personally that's not related to this podcast. Let me get all of those things done. And if I have this pocket or time, because the dedication to a podcast is at least, whether anybody tells you this or not, is at least 4 hours. And it's like, well, where did you get 4 hours from? You got to think of what you're going to talk about. You'll actually talk about it. You're going to make sure it's some structure. And to add to that, you have to go back and listen to the show to make sure there's no hiccups and no issues. And once you finish listening to it, you then have to go through, and if it's stuff that needs to be cleaned up in the audio, you clean up the audio. But most importantly, you then are making sure it's tagged properly, making sure that you get it to its proper platforms. If you're pushing it on other applications, that it goes across those apps properly. All of those things come with just doing just the recording. So it's stuff to think of or remember when it comes to doing a podcast on a full scope. All of that being said, and then I know I'm like really rambling with this. I just want people to I know that was like a tangent from the social media part, because the main part of the convo that I had yesterday, and we'll probably talk about it more today, is don't rely on these apps, man. Don't rely on these, like, what is it, Flowy or FlowMe, or it's like they got different pages that you can put all of your links for different platforms on there. I think that's fine, that's cool, but it's better if you can design and make your own version of it. Make it. As a designer, as a graphic designer / web designer / software engineer / coder, all whatever you want to bucket or bag it as. Once you get that awareness and that idea that you have control of what you're designing or what you're working on, it gives you such a wide net on what you can do. Case in point, and this kind of goes into what, and I talked with Brittany about this yesterday, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't consider, but no one's really making it a conversation, but it's time for us to make it a conversation. And that is, cool, you have a business. Your business has a website. Website's a good option. Website's a reliable option. Your website has your contact information, like phone number, email, things of that sort. Does your business have an application? Has anyone considered talking to you about creating an app for your phone that is actually not going to, one, bust you in the head, two, not going to not be, it will be more beneficial than tedious? Because those are things to think about when it comes to doing this as well. And most importantly, which I've had this, like I said, I had this conversation yesterday with her. I had this conversation with someone last week. The one way that most folks don't realize how you can really get business going, email. Use email. Like, your email address for a business, I'm probably going to get in trouble for what I'm about to say. And I'm going to make sure I take a sip before I go into what I'm about to make trouble with saying. As much as people use their service or utilize the platform, Gmail email addresses are not it. Yahoo email addresses are not it. They're good to use. They're manageable because it's a simple interface and it's your email address that you were able to set up for the business. But if you're doing business and you want to getting the client across the street is cool, but getting the client in another country or in another time zone is what your goal is. And you want to do that by them seeing that you are a business with an email address. And I know email addresses, Gmail's advantage and Google's advantage as a whole is that it's free. I'm not fighting anyone on the utilizing the free resources. That's not where I'm going. But you also have to sometimes make investments accordingly to benefit what you're trying to get done. Case in point, and I'm gonna close this out. I'm gonna pass a message, and we getting up out of here. I was very close to not making some choices that could have not been a benefit at the time. It was benefit, but it wasn't benefit. It was not a long-term benefit. It was like a short-term, all right, I'm gonna get something out of it, cool, yay. But not in a long-term aspect. It was not the best option. The money that I was close to spending in doing that, I'm grateful that I didn't do what I did, because I was able to utilize and use those funds to push my business. And when I say push my business, I mean I've already had my laptop. I think now I've had the laptop about 2 months, and that was something that, on a random side note, a simple investment like newer hardware can go a long way. You may not see it immediately, and it may have its impact internally or unintentionally, but in the long run, you're gonna value it when you least expect it. But denying the option of what I was going to do versus me doing what I actually did, I valued doing what I actually did in the long run, which was getting a domain for my business, getting an email for my business, and learning, kind of almost doing like a self-taught class of using, kind of fiddling with WordPress, but also using Elementor. And this is another part that probably could be another podcast all by itself, but I'm going to still say it because we're here and someone may need to hear this. If you need to get the book to learn the program, get the book and learn the program. And when I say that, or when I reference that, I mean it in the sense of, don't feel so compelled to not do the right things to learn what you need to learn. I think sometimes we are so gun-ho and so pressed on not, it's almost like there's this like heightened level of concern that if we, how can I put this? We want to learn it, but we don't realize that we're going to have to put the time into learning it. And that's something that I'm beginning to really like zero in on and like really make a big deal out of, which is having the books is fine, but sitting down and actually reading them and really getting like the nitty gritty of what this book is going to provide in you learning this application of this program, it makes a very huge impact, or it becomes a much bigger deal than you realize on the surface. In this immediate moment, it's not going to make sense. But once you really sit down and say, let me really read this book and really see what this is about, and learn from what you're going to gain from the book that you just ordered or were able to download online, or whatever the case may be. Because then from there, once you have that, it becomes the domino effect of, all right, cool, now I know how to do this. Let me try and work on this. Let me give some more time to this. And if you have the foundation, like having a foundation for it makes it even better. So in a roundabout way, from everything I just said, let me circle. I'm not gonna circle back to the sports side. I'm gonna circle back to this tech part and really zero in on the stuff that I want to share with this, because this is something that we're all not thinking about, but we need to be more aware of it. Over the next 5 to 10 years, pay attention to the applications. To take that a step further, don't feel so compelled to rely or live and die by what the application is doing. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Clubhouse, all of them can go tomorrow. If you lose that application, do you have the community, or do you have the, not, I won't even say the community, do you have the ability to build your community? And if you do, are you willing to put the time in to build that community more? If you don't, then you gotta find those ways to get the connections. The first way is, I just mentioned, the email. Getting people's email address, not to spam folks to death with junk and foolishness, but to actually send people good information. And I'll take this a layer further. Don't feel compelled to lock in and rely on the MailChimps and the other platforms. Make your own email. You can make emails using Canva. I know a lot of people hear me give a lot of grief about Canva, but Canva works. If you need to get something designed, use Canva. If you want to take it a step further, InDesign literally lets you create publications. Like, you can create a publication, save it as a PNG. If it's anything that's in it word-based and you need to create links, you can do all of those things in InDesign. You can do it in Canva too, but I'm just sharing this as awareness to, you don't have to feel compelled to reinvent the wheel, let alone, taking it a step further, write out your templates in your email address and with your email, and just have them available to change for what you need to and how you modify. We don't, as designers and as people who create or have the ability of creating, we feel like we have to reinvent the wheel, and you don't. Most of the time, you just need to make small modifications on what you've already done and enhance those things and make it better. And that's what separates the designers from the designers. And I know that's like an odd way of saying it, but it'll make sense in its own unique form. Trust me. All right, I'm going to share this. So I'm going to share this message that I got on Instagram from the Adobe Express page. And then we're going to talk about this as the message to pass along. Excuse me. And we are going to do what we do.
Just 10% of people think about creating. Of that 10% who think about creating, 10% actually do it. Of that 10% who create, 10% keep going. Just keep going. Just 10 people think about creating.
I've probably shared this as a message on the page, on the podcast before. It's a sign, and I don't know how, not to say I don't know how, but I'm really intrigued to make this sign like an actual sign that I want to own. But it literally says, nobody cares, work harder. And it's valid. Like, nobody cares. Like, as much as you think people care or are like really concerned, they don't care. They care to see that you get what you need to get done, but the care that you think they have about it, they don't care. Work harder, show up, give the best effort. Like, put your time into what you're doing. The planners, the executors, the doers, the seekers, the workers, that gets filtered down very thoroughly. There's a reason why as much people don't like to talk about it, as much as people don't like to talk about it, you really have to think of why very few people get up early. Like, we hear it all the time. Oh, you got to get up early. You got to do this. He's like, well, I got to get up early. I don't want to do all that. And it's like, you get up so that way you got your day going. Like, this morning, even with me not setting an alarm, I still got up like almost before 5:30. And I'm like, my brain has been programmed to do this. And it's not like a dangerous signal or a dangerous sign. It's just me becoming accustomed to that, becoming my routine and being okay with that. The message I'm passing along to you is, find your layer of 10% that you're trying to get to and tap in and crack the code. I've always shared this on the podcast frequently and often, and I still share it, and I still live by it to this day. And that is, pen and paper go a long way. I think I shared it when Tara was on the show. Was on the show last month. Walmart has a composition notebook that's $1. They also have these little notebooks it's a 3-pack for $1. It's similar to it's the exact same type as what Dollar General has. It's like a 3-pack for $1. The difference is, and it's nothing against it, the Dollar General pack isn't the best quality, but it's set. It's a starter set to have to use for writing. Get one of those notebooks between one of the sets and just start. Anytime you have ideas or thoughts, jot them down. Get a pen, find your favorite pen. I am becoming more compelled with telling people, and this is nothing against any other stores, but between CVS and Walgreens, and if you find them at Rite Aid, go into the pen section, look for the Pilot pens, find your lane of if you are a thin writer or a thick writer. Pause, covered, not even going to start on that. But if you need a little bit more boldness to your pen, go for the 1.0. If you need the traditional, everybody's using it and if it ain't broke, don't fix it, go with the 0.5. If you're trying to get to that needle point, thin, 0.38, you'll thank me later. And just get to work. Get the creativity juices flowing and challenge yourself and see what you have the ability to do by just by investing in yourself and not feeling hurt by not getting what you think you should be doing and taking a chance on like writing it out. Now, if you on that next level, like if you're a person that's really like a note person, there are two note avenues I always will go to. One I've talked about, I literally did a podcast just on their product, and that's Rocketbook. Get a Rocketbook. Get the traditional 8.5 by 11, or get the one that's like the next size below it, or get the little small notepad. Like it's funny, like when I packed for the trip, that was the one thing I didn't pack. I packed a good amount of things, but the one thing I didn't pack was a Rocketbook. And yeah, usually on my I have a case that I carry like my 2 bullet journals and my actual journal, and between both of them, or between that set, like I have a Rocketbook pen that I always carry with me. Like I have a Rocketbook pen that I carry with me. I have a Rocketbook pen that stays at work. I keep a pen in some area because I'm always thinking like, oh shoot, let me make sure I got one of this specific pen because it works for the Rocketbook. So Rocketbook is one option if you're going to that level. I'm reminding everyone of this because I didn't know it until after the fact. If you buy the Rocketbook, regardless of which version you buy, it comes with the pen. It comes with the pen, and it comes with the towel, like the fiber cloth towel that you can use to like erase or whatever, which it's simple of just put it under some water. After you've taken a picture of what you are going to share or send out, clean the pages off. Just put a little bit of water. You don't need to damp the whole cloth, but just put enough water, wipe it down, and it'll dry itself, and then you're good. You can use it again. And the other option is Moleskine. I am a huge advocate of Moleskine notebooks. I think the Moleskine addiction for me started 2016, 2017. I will find any way possible to get a Moleskine notebook, regardless of the size. Like I've got these really, really small ones that I picked up as a 2-pack one time, and I was like, I am not going to use this anytime soon, but I have them. as a, hey, if I need to really get a note somewhere, let me jot a note real quick. Like I took, when I went out yesterday, I had mine with me. I didn't use it, but I was also like, I need to always, like, it's almost like, like I said, it's the inadvertent scout mindset of like, be prepared. So yeah, message for today is, if you have that ability to create, stop challenging yourself of why you don't do it and start challenging yourself on doing it. And most importantly, get the right people around you who can build your creativity, not diminish it. Because you need folks. If y'all are hearing that, I am so sorry. This is why you should drink water, not what I'm having this morning, because it's not agreeing, but it's okay. Just have those people who can really get you to where you're trying to go. And you won't, and as an added bonus, you should want folks that are for you, not against you. Because if it's an against, or it's a war, or inadvertently a competition, there's a bigger problem on hand, and that's something that has to be addressed and unpacked on its own. So that's what I have for y'all today. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, an amazing upcoming week. We will possibly be getting back to the weekly shows again. Everything for me comes down, and I'm open and honest with saying this. Everything comes down to normally what or how my day goes with what I'm working on or doing. Sometimes I could be in a space of, oh man, I'm ready to do X, Y, and Z and posting things. But life and reality can be like, nope, this ain't the week. You need to focus on some other stuff. So if I'm in that space of doing it, and sometimes I've also learned, if I'm giving myself that ability to do it, I will, after work, do like kind of an impromptu recording. The recording is never the problem. It's also just making the space and the time of like actually sitting and editing and making sure all of the bells and whistles are done outside of the recording. So we will see if it's, like I said, if it becomes like a weekly flow, it'll become a weekly flow. If it comes down to it, I may get to that retro space of just keeping the mic on the table, and if a moment hit, hey, I got something to talk about, let's get into it and make it be what it be. But hope y'all stay safe, stay sane, continue building and evolving, and not letting the dumb stuff get you off course. Until next time, y'all take it easy. Another episode is completed. Thank you all for listening. If you want to check out the podcast, you can go to buzzsprout.com. If you're looking to do podcasts, you can go to buzzsprout.com. To get to my podcast, you'll go to the pastbtpod.buzzsprout.com. If you're looking at getting a microphone, I always suggest getting the Blue Yeti X. That is the microphone that I use. If you're starting off and you need something more affordable, Samson Meteor, it's a worthwhile investment. And there are other microphones that are going to be simple enough. My big suggestion I tell everyone whenever looking for a microphone, be sure that your microphone has the ability to have you listen to your audio or listen to yourself as you're talking. It will make a big difference in your editing and your podcast. Also, most importantly, and I tell people this is a tip offline, but I'm giving this in the final listen or at the end of the show. Drink water while recording, and also just drink water in general. But drink water while you're recording, and the reason why, you'll be surprised. All right. See y'all on the next show.